We welcome Suan and we welcome you all to the Sunday night Sutta in the City. Now, as you know, we're starting a entirely new chapter on our Dharma Express here on our little survey throughout the suttas of the Buddha, his teachings. And we thought that a nice little foray into Dharma learning after the aggregates would be anger. So now that everyone knows that everything is just, arising, passing away, one illusion after another, that we don't have to cling to anything. Well, heck, it's a great time to take a look at anger because that's just one more thing that we don't have to cling to, right?
Well, if learning about the aggregates have made you angry, you've come to the right place.
Or if they've made you curious for wanting more. And that's what we hope as well. But thank you, Stephen. All right. So we are going to take a look at a poem. Now, it's interesting. I chose this poem, and for some reason, well, Stephen didn't take a liking to it.
I'm not angry. I'm
No,
not angry.
you just didn't approve, but that's okay. I like
We,
this poem. What, Stephen? Did I start too soon?
I love this poem.
Okay. Excellent. Well, this one is called Marriage by Dan Gerber, but I thought it's a great way to have well, I'm not married, but I thought it's a great way to interact with anyone that we care about or even someone we may not know so much at all. So I will read it and y'all will let me know. When you are angry, it's your gentle self I love until that's who you are. In any case, I can't love this anger anymore than I can warm my heart with ice. I go on loving your smile till it finds its way back to your face. And I like this because this to me sort of aligns with one of my ways of looking at anger when I'm in my dreams, imagining my perfect self, which is when an individual maybe strikes out at me in anger, I'm able to remember other sides of them, not just the side that I'm seeing right now that feels threatening that I want to strike at and make stop, right? It's like, okay, there's other sides to this person. And I'm going to think of those right now. And I think that that to me is a very positive way of looking at conflict because I know that when I've been in conflict and, well, fairly recently, maybe, because I'm living in a strange situation right now, it's easy to have that happen. But it's um, what is the first thing that we want to do? Is it to love that person until they come back to their gentle self? Or do we, like a lion, want to pull out the claws and strike them? Like in the cartoons where the cat goes like that, and then the cartoon character breaks up into five different pieces. I don't know if you've seen that cartoon, but sometimes that's how I feel when someone's like really upsetting, yelling at me. Um, it's sort of like a wanting to pull away, to push back. And we also thought this was important in all truth. Probably a lot of you are aware, at least I hope you're aware, that this seems to be the prevailing zeitgeist, right? It's like people, and when I say people, I'm not excluding myself, but we see that people are so quick to anger these days. Um, so quick to take umbrage, so quick to see microaggression, macroaggression, and uh, even, well, I don't know if you guys, I'm not on Facebook like almost ever, but apparently I've just been hacked and I got a notice from my bank. Um, okay, well, I just went off track there. But but to say that it's like when we look on social media, a lot of the things that are posted are very negative, aren't they? And on YouTube, like I noticed that there'll be snippets of television show, and it'll say something like, oh, I can't think of the broadcasters' names right now. Wolf Blitzer crushes the opposition. this type of thing. They use terms like crushes or annihilates. It is just like up to 11. People don't say things like, Wolf Blitzer comments on the religious right's answer to whatever. No, it's like dominates, crushes, obliterates. And it's a very unhealthy place that we've gotten ourselves into. So Stephen and I were talking about this and what can we do? And of course, the initial reaction is, let me go out there and fix all this. This is wrong. This is bad. This is terrible. We can't have a society this way. But if we look at it from the dharmic perspective, it's an inside job. It has to start here first. Um, and so we're kind of hoping to initiate that with this little packet that we've created for you. Stephen, do you want to add anything before I pull up our reading?
No, I mean, I'm excited to learn about this because I think one of the great challenges with the term anger is that it's usually wrapped up in another large group of emotions. Sort of like when we were speaking at length about the aggregates, we always said, well, it's really hard to think about one aggregate in isolation. And it also seems hard sometimes to think about anger in isolation because it seems wrapped up in ideas of disappointment or disapproval or condemnation. And sometimes it would seem that the word anger is almost synonymous with those terms. But I think we'll see here in these readings that's not necessarily the case. And so one of the great challenges, I think, is to be fully aware of what's happening when you feel, or you might feel angry. But in a way, it's paradoxical because when you're angry, you don't really have mindfulness. And so if you're not mindful, you can't really know what's happening. All you know is some sort of emotional response. And so I think it's very helpful to look at these emotions in this kind of very precise way because it can start to arm us or gird us when we enter real life situations, and maybe we can slow down and think along the lines that the Buddha did in terms of our behavior.
Thank you. And I just want to add, when we spoke about the aggregates and we spoke about physical pain, we talked about, well, where is this pain? Is it in the body? Is it in the mind? And then, of course, Stephen and I had a bit of an argument and we reached out to our teacher and he said it's both. And so when we talk about anger, I just want to emphasize that it really is a biopsychological response. And it goes back to the primacy of our being. So it goes back to survival. So what happens when we're angry is like so many different things, but also our eyes, our pupils. I mean, we focus in. And then what that means is all of this stuff out here gets left out. And when we have this tunnel vision, which is what our body does to us, it's easier to attack, right? So when I was on retreat once with Bhikkhu Analayo, and we talked at length about anger, one of the tricks that he said was instead of, going in for the kill, is to back out, back, use your wide angle lens, not the telephoto, and get a whole view. Because what the body does, like I said, it zooms in. And so to counteract that, you're not going to be able maybe to walk back 20 paces, but psychologically distancing oneself can really help with the anger response. But with that, I think it's time to get to the reading. So let us see where we begin.
Etchings.
Etchings.
It's a great term.
It is a good term. I like it. So, of course, as always, we need our faithful volunteers.
I'll read.
Sue-Ann will start us off. Go ahead, Sue-Ann, with etchings.
Okay, thank you. Mendicants. These three people are found in the world. What three? A person like a line drawn in stone, a person like a line drawn in sand, and a person like a line drawn in water. And who is the person like a line drawn in stone? It's a person who is often angry and their anger lingers for a long time. It's like a line drawn in stone, which isn't quickly worn away by wind and water, but lasts for a long time. In the same way, this person is often angry and their anger lingers for a long time. This is called a person like a line drawn in stone. And who is a person like a line drawn in sand? It is a person who is often angry, but their anger doesn't linger long. It's like a line drawn in sand, which is quickly worn away by wind and water and doesn't last long. In the same way, this person is often angry, but their anger doesn't linger long. This is called a person like a line drawn in sand.
Thank you, Suan. So we have,
Thank you.
thank you. So we have Brahmin next.
And who is the person like a line drawn in water? It's a person who, though spoken to by someone in a rough, harsh, and disagreeable manner, still stays in touch, interacts with, and greets them. It's like a line drawn in water, which vanishes right away and doesn't last long. In the same way, this person, though spoken to by someone in a rough, harsh, and disagreeable manner, still stays in touch, interacts with, and greets them. This is called a person like a line drawn in water. These are the three people found in the world.
Thank you so much, Brahmin. So we'll discuss this a bit and perhaps we'll be able to go on to the vipers, which is fun as well. But we see here, go ahead, Stephen.
I was just going to say, be like water. Isn't that a famous phrase? I don't know. It sounds like it to me.
Well, it's made famous now. So I think we get the gist here, people, right? Um, we've all seen those who are like the person with like a line drawn in stone, right? They're the people who carry anger around with them, sort of like a millstone, because it's just always there. But the thing about anger, I mean, a lot of people have this idea that it's empowering, and in a lot of ways it is. But when it's a constant presence, it's a dragging down, it's an exhaustion, it's like a wall that one has to continually construct around oneself. And of course, a line drawn in stone is very hard to erase. It can take years and years and years. And maybe some of you have known someone like this, sort of the grudge holder. You did something and maybe you got them a gift card from Starbucks for Christmas and they don't like coffee and they don't like any of the teas, or they think Starbucks is a corporate entity that they hate, or whatever it is. They don't like the gift card. They didn't think it was nice. They can't tell you, but when they finally do 6 months later and you apologize, it's that line. It just doesn't want to wear away, does it? That anger just stays there. Um, Go ahead, Stephen.
I thought I would share quickly a meditation retreat experience I had, which I think might be interesting in this context, and if I may. So one time I was at a meditation retreat where we were told, of course, as it's often done, to observe one's mind and notice when sensations or thoughts arise and both pass away. And I had a very hard time noticing when things would pass away. It was okay. It was really not so hard for me to understand when something sort of popped into the mind, a sensation or a thought. But it was extraordinarily difficult for me to catch the moment when it stopped being present, because I thought, well, if it's not present, but I think about it, isn't it kind of present again? And so it became this whole paradoxical nightmare for me on the cushion. But one of the things the teacher told me, which I thought was so important and interesting, is that if we don't notice when things pass away, we're left with the false impression that things can be permanent. And I think one of the things that this sutta talks about is this kind of major concept of impermanence. Because we'd like to think that things can just remain in our mind like a piece of etched stone. But we all know, as sort of sutta readers or students of the Buddha, that things are constantly arising and passing away. And what we're doing is constantly picking up again, and taking it again as, well, this is the thought, this is the way I feel. And it's very hard to sort of put that back down and leave it down. And so it's very hard to see impermanence, particularly when you're ready to hold a grudge. And it's in fact very hard to see the ending of thoughts or ideas at all. And I found it a very important for me kind of experience and a sort of a practice to sort of think about how I've had thoughts, ideas, opinions, and then at some point, not really discerned by me, I no longer really had that. It kind of went away. I don't know when. I only realized after the fact that it really wasn't there anymore. And so I think the more we can see how things are constantly flickering in and out, up and down, the more we can be willing to acknowledge the truth, which is that they're not really just sitting in our mind. We are sort of actively reestablishing them. So that's my thought about this.
Well, I like that thought because, one of the things that we'll be studying throughout this particular mini course is resentments, which of course existed in the time of the Buddha as well, and he addresses them. But we know that resentiment means to feel again, right? To feel again, as you said, Stephen, to pick up again. And remembering the words of the Buddha, whatever the mind frequently ponders, that becomes the inclination of the mind. And I have to continually remind myself that because it's this, what is it that I want to feed? What nourishment does my mind want? Am I craving angry thoughts? And then how do we get from, if we've been this person who has the line drawn in stone, how do we get from being one who has a line drawn in stone, who's always angry, to the person who, okay, well, we'll move to sand. And then how do you get from the person with like a line drawn in sand to the line drawn in water? And along with this, these suttas that we're reading, we're also going to have like little worksheets and little assignments for those of you who wish to participate to help facilitate maybe moving from the person who has a line drawn in stone to a line drawn in water. And one of the things uh, that I would say that it's very difficult is when one is angry to the outer world, there's a tendency to feed anger within. So that means if one is likely to strike out at people, then that person is likely striking out at themselves internally. And so this is when metta is really an extremely important um, practice. And I will say for myself, as a person who began this practice as extremely averse to the world, and who was extremely very anti-meta. If there could have been like meta and then like a big strike through it, that would have been me. Because I really just thought that was for people who just didn't have goals in life. I don't know. I just thought it was it wasn't my thing. Until finally, I was brought to a point where it's like, I heard from enough teachers and I experienced enough of this line drawn in stone that I was like, let me try this stuff. And I will say that it works. It works. So I'm hoping that we can investigate this further as we go along. Anything else, Stephen, or should we move to the vipers, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I thought maybe if somebody has a specific question or comment on this sutta, we would take it now. I just wanted to mention one thing I like to notice myself is when sometimes if I'm very vexed about something and I'll go to bed, and then I'll notice when I wake up at the very first waking, sort of semi asleep, I'll feel great. And then I'll notice that the vexation will sort of click back in at some point. And I'll have a clear understanding and knowledge of that sort of before and after. And I'll understand how much better it felt before that nagging vexation sort of reestablished itself in my mind. And so I find that sort of an interesting sort of practice in itself because it makes you see how much better you feel without all that negative feeling and how the mind is just kind of fluctuating between these states. It's really not, the mind is never really like a line drawn in stone.
Right. So I see our readers' hands, but if there's anyone who does have a question or a comment about these various personalities, of course, this is a simplified way of viewing it, but if there are questions related to this, we can take them now.
I have a question.
Okay, first Suanne and then Raj.
Okay. When we're talking about these lines in stone, sand, and water, are we putting the length of time that these last, when they say for a long time? Because I have a situation right now. I was always quick to be angry, and I'm really trying to work on that. And my cousin wrote something. She disowned me for some faux pas I made on Facebook, of all places. And I am really so angry that our relationship should be that fragile to her that I want to write her, but I don't want to write her in anger. And this has been like a week and a half ago already. Now, is this line in the stone ever going to leave? How long do I give it before you know what I mean? It's like, is there like, what would you say is a long enough time to be that angry at somebody? And I'm trying to not be, but it's really, I feel so self-righteous and justified about it that it's a very difficult situation that I'm in.
Right.
And I'm just, do you know what I mean? Like, do you think like I should say, hey, it's already been a week and a half, give it up already, and just, try a little kindness and see if we can get to some kind of agreement?
So one of the things, thank you for that. So first of all, unfortunately, this is not an uncommon situation that you bring up. Social media is difficult. But one of the things that I really want to stress is that when we feel angry or we feel someone has done us wrong, and we'll see this in further suttas, our job, unfortunately, is to sit with it. It's very uncomfortable. It's very unpleasant. We want it to stop. This is part of acting out, is like, I want to send an email to just shake you out of this behavior that's hurting me. But it's important to sit with it a while, I think, to deal with the discomfort and see what's happening with us rather than the other person. So while we're studying this, I really, it is easy to look out into the world and there's so many horrible things happening. There always have been, but now it seems so exponential. But we want to really explore our experience. And I think also in relation to when to take action, I've never in my life, and I've even just done it recently, I've never in my life been satisfied of the outcome of a situation when I responded in anger. It just hasn't happened good for me. If I could say, wow, when I really gave this person what for, we ended up best friends and we just loved each other. It just hasn't worked out that way. So for me, my best practices, and I say best, I didn't say constant and always, I said my best practice is to respond with loving kindness. And if I can't do that, if there's residual anger, disgust, judgment, I have to just let it be and be with it. I know it's not the best answer that one would want, but I think it is mostly the right answer. And now I'm going to go with Raj.
Thank you, Regina. I guess two things that just struck me as we speak about this. When I think about a line drawn in stone, I feel like there's some kind of erosion taking place there. Like when we draw a line in stone, we lose part of that stone. So that kind of that was what was standing out for me. The second thing is I really like what you said, Stephen, about the impermanence of our emotions. Um, I find one thing that helps me in my practice is when I'm sitting and I realize some emotion coming up, and I note it, instead of saying, like I am angry, to say this is anger. It just kind of puts some space between me and the anger, and allows me to see it come up and disappear. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Raj. I really, really love that expression, anger is arising. I just know that for myself in the past, as I confessed to y'all, I have had, tend to have an aversive personality, much less so than before. But when I viewed myself as an angry person, it was very much a default to embody that personality that sort of reified that notion and that behavior of anger. So yeah, the separation is a great tactic. So thank you for bringing that up. And I really liked how you said that, Raj, too, about how when the line is drawn in stone, something is lost. That was beautiful. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Um, so are there any thoughts? We can always go back to other suttas. We don't have to go on to vipers if you have other questions, or we can go on to vipers. Y'all good? Okay, we'll go on to the vipers then. Um, okay, I'm just seeing. All right, very good. So we have Brahmin.
Vipers, mendicants, there are these four kinds of viper. What for? Number one whose venom is fast acting but not lethal. One whose venom is lethal but not fast acting. One whose venom is both fast acting and lethal. And one whose venom is neither fast acting nor lethal. These are the four kinds of viper. In the same way, these four people, similar to vipers, are found in the world. What for? One whose venom is fast acting but not lethal. One whose venom is lethal but not fast acting. One whose venom is both fast acting and lethal. And one whose venom is neither fast acting nor lethal.
Thank you so much, Brahmin. Okay,
Thank
so we
you.
have these. Thank you, appreciate it. So
But
venom.
should we finish the sutta?
You want to finish the sutta?
I don't know. Should we
I
have the
wanted
whole
you,
picture?
I wanted you to explain us the, well, you know what, let's finish it. And then I was going to ask you to explain these different vipers, just in case, just to clarify things for us. But then we have Linda to read.
And how is a person's venom fast acting but not lethal? It's when a person is often angry, but their anger doesn't linger long. That's how a person's venom is fast acting but not lethal. That person is like a viper whose venom is fast acting but not lethal. And how is a person's venom lethal but not fast acting? It's when a person is not often angry, but their anger lingers for a long time. And how is a person's venom both fast acting and lethal? It's when a person is often angry and their anger lingers for a long time. And how is a person's venom neither fast acting nor lethal? It's when a person is not often angry and their anger doesn't linger long. These four people, similar to vipers, are found in the world.
Thank you so much, Linda. So Stephen, thoughts on these different types of viperous people?
Well, it seems sad that we all have to be assigned to a certain snake. But Of course, it's really, of course, not, has nothing whatsoever to do with snakes, right? It has to do with mental states, and therefore we could say it has to do with ideally an identification or understanding of one's own mental states, because the purpose of this list is not to sort of categorize everyone out there in the world and put them and say, well, my friend Bill is like number 2, and Kathy is 3, and Regina is definitely a number whatever, but rather to identify what's happening for ourselves, because I think most of us can honestly say that we might be able to be slotted into all of these categories at some point. And so I think what's helpful about the list is to help us kind of get a vocabulary to describe what's happening in our own minds, not to sort of put people on in different columns, right? And so we can see, well, is this, am I just trying, if I'm only angry, so the question arises to me, if somebody's often angry but their anger is not long, well, is that good or bad? It's sort of a question that is not, it doesn't seem to be fully answered in this sutta to me. Is that okay? Should I be sort of satisfied with that? Or if my venom is like really lethal but not fast acting, so is that okay? Because, well, I don't, it's only when somebody really drives me to the brink, well, then I just can't help myself, but it doesn't happen that much. So I think one might try to sort of justify their anger, unfortunately, using this second way by saying, well, I almost never get angry. I have a really high threshold. But when I reach that point, well, look out, because you're going to get melted down. I'm going to be like that dragon in Game of Thrones. You're done, right? But I don't think that's really the point here either. And so, or fast acting and lethal, like, do I want that? Or maybe we would rather have neither fast acting nor lethal. And so probably it would seem to me, at least, that the only acceptable category that I would sort of strive for is the final one. Because I would think one of the big ideas to remember here is that anger is a choice. And it's very, very tempting to think that someone or something is angering me.
Mhm.
And therefore, it is not my choice to react. I'm just simply having to do what you made me to do. But if we try to regain our volition here, our agency, and try to say, well, I'm in charge, well, then I am the one who can choose to become angry or not. But Regina, would you agree with that?
Okay, well, yeah, you
Are
kind
you
of,
angry?
I'm angry.
Uh-oh.
Anger is arising. No, I just want to be careful because I think the angry expression or how we express our anger is a choice. But I think I want to be careful when saying anger is a choice, because I don't know. I think people can't always choose their emotions or their feelings, but
No, definitely not. I wouldn't say that. But I think that one can work on it,
right.
especially if one takes this sort of flux view of a person, like, well, I'm like that. This kind of, we hear this talk a lot. Well, I'm just an angry person, or that's who I am. Well, this kind of language actually kind of goes against the whole idea of the concept of a person not being a solid self, right? So if we just try to take refuge by shelter by saying, well, a leopard can't change its spots. I am who I am. That's it. Well, it's kind of, to me, not very wholesome attitude.
Agreed. Agreed. And again, I for myself would speak to how one behaves in relation to that emotional experience. But I don't think that you're separating the two. But I also think that how one feels is a precursor to how one will respond, which is why the Buddha always enjoined us to be mindful, to be aware of how we're feeling. And it is true that feelings of anger can be attenuated greatly through the practice.
And noticing how anger feels in the body. And
Mm.
I think I have to say that most people would probably admit that the feeling of anger in the body is not a great feeling. It's not like a paradise. It's a pretty painful, unpleasant, something you want to get rid of feeling. We somehow are able to override this knowledge and sort of go for it anyway. But as you say, I think the more we can sort of, when we become angered and then start to think about our physical body, aware of it, and we feel what's happening, that kind of tight constriction, pulse rate, shortness of breath, it's all something we rather not have. And so I think that can be a very helpful feedback about the
Mhm.
quality of anger. Duncan, you have a question or a comment? But you're muted. Yes.
Yes, it was about the phrasing of it. For example, they say, how is a person's venom neither fast acting nor lethal? It's when a person is not often angry and their anger does not linger long. So my question is about the translation, the use of the word fast acting. If a person is not often angry, it seems like what this, from what I'm understanding, might be better translated is how is a person's venom neither frequent nor lethal? Because fast acting has to do with how fast the venom gets into the system. But maybe I'm missing something.
So to me, when I read that, and that I appreciate that question. So fast acting, of course, that's someone who's quick to strike, right? Um, so allowing angry thoughts, picking up resentments, refeeling feelings will prime us to behave in a way that will facilitate us to snap in anger, fast acting like a snake, right? And the antidote to that striking out is to be in a state of equanimity. We can't do this all the time, right? But to cultivate equanimous states. And when a person is not often angry, or we can say when a person is often equanimous, then their venom will not be fast acting. In other words, they'll be less apt to strike out. And when they do say something in anger, perhaps it won't be to the core of your being so that it absolutely destroys you as a person. I don't know if that somewhat answers.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the fast acting here is referring to the reactivity of the person. Are we quick to take umbrage or do we kind of let it slide? Well, are we more watery? Whatever. I'm not going to let that go. I don't really care. Or are we going to immediately associate it with some sort of horrific slight and come to blows?
Mhm.
Right. So it's really important. A lot of people don't cotton to the phrase self-care. Uh, but the Buddha promoted self-care before, Oprah did. And that was through meditation, that was through loving kindness, that was through watching how one felt and self-soothing through um, engaging in positive mental states. And why did the Buddha want us to do that? Because when we engage in these self-soothing activities, we're less likely to act out on the defilements. We're less likely to strike out like a viper. Mm.
I think it's easy to lose sight of the whole package of the Buddhist teaching, which is in essentially how to be happy in a profound way, right? It's not only about understanding lots of obscure terms. It is really about how to live and how to exist without suffering, how to set aside suffering. And so the first thing maybe we have to acknowledge is that being angry is a type of suffering, which is not so easy to do because we might feel that we have no choice, or we might even feel like we enjoy being angry. We enjoy being in pain, or maybe we deserve to be in pain. And so there's a lot of complicated emotions here that have to be sorted out for that person.
It's true. And another thing that I wanted to point out when we're talking about venom here and the lethality of that venom, again, as I started off in the very beginning of when we first started talking about this, is that venom doesn't just go outward, right? I mean, the snake isn't affected by his or her venom, but it's in them. And much like us, the venom of anger is in us, and it has a very profound effect on our psychological and mental well-being, but also physical.
Absolutely. Linda, do you have a comment or question?
I think Linda was going to be a reader,
Okay.
and Brahmin. I don't know. I think we're pretty much at the end of the reading for tonight, but we'll have plenty Thursday. Brahmin, did you have a question, or was that a reading hand? That was a reading hand.
Reading hand.
Okay, super. Does anyone else have any other questions regarding this?
Or if anyone took the sutta to mean something else in a different way.
Okay, it seems like everyone's got it, which is.
I think everyone is much more skilled with anger than you and I, Regina.
Well, anger was something that I dealt with a lot. I'll be honest with you guys. And it's a very, very painful mind state. And unfortunately, it's one of those things where it doesn't stay with us. It does go outside, and it doesn't just go outside, it stays with us. So it's reciprocal. And the Buddha talks about, when we practice loving kindness, we sleep well, our skin glows, people find us beautiful. And it's true, because I'm sure all of us have seen those who have anger. There's this woman who's in my building, and when I take, oh God, it's like, oh, is she going to the elevator? Let me just linger at my mailbox here and let her go up, because it's like, I kind of don't want to be stuck in the elevator with her, because it's just so very awkward. She's got this very hard face, and you don't know if she's going to say anything. And then, so, you kind of want to not be that person.
Right.
Yes.
Catherine? I see Catherine has her hand up, but she's muted.
Yes, yes. Probably by always reminding ourselves that this anger is not mine, this is I'm not, and this is not myself. Probably this will help.
Absolutely. If there's one lesson we took away from all our investigation on the aggregates, that would be an excellent one. And we understand that these things arise and pass away through conditions, right? And so the reason why we get angry, it's a conditioned response through a lot of different elements or factors. And the reason we stop being angry is also due to conditions. But a huge mistake, I would say, that we all make in the Buddhist perspective is to take anger as mine. It's my anger. She makes me angry. I can't help being angry. How could I not be angry? All these things are really kind of missteps.
Carolyn.
Carolyn is muted.
I'm sorry. I have lots of stuff to work on, but anger is the least of them. It's very slow to arise. It rarely arises. And I really think I want to share, going back to the metta that you mentioned, Regina.
Mm-hmm.
I've practiced that for years and years and years, probably way before I came to a Buddhist practice. It was actually what I was doing. So if something looks like it's going to be annoying or cause anger to arise, immediately, I see it and I go right to metta. And even if I see this happening among somebody else, like outside or whatever, somebody getting mad at somebody, I immediately move and send metta to these two unknown people, and so on. And it's been such a help. I mean, metta's a really important thing. And when everything switches to loving kindness, it takes practice, but you can move to a really better place for yourself. And to just share, which Stephen does know, I have sent Trump metta every day for 4 years, every single day. and sometimes even 4 and 5 times a day. And I must say, my heart opened to this man, and I felt such amazing compassion for him, even at his worst, that even though I may not like what he's doing, I actually felt love for him. And I found that extraordinary, and I realized that is the power of metta. And that's why I practice that way. So I just wanted to share how helpful it can be. And if we need to send it to ourselves, of course, send it to ourselves. But somehow I catch it in other situations too. And metta is my first go-to. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. I always knew metta was strong medicine, but you have truly proven the case in that situation. So I thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yes, Leonardo.
Hello.
Hi, Leonardo.
Could not agree more with everything that has been said so far. This conversation reminded me of a teaching that I read from a Buddhist monk. I would say 3 years ago or 4, in which he says something applied to anger that I think may be of interest. And of course, it has been implied in the subtext of most of what we have been saying. As most things we're aware of can become a teacher of us, for us. So everything can be a teacher, can teach us something. And in anger, for this monk, he had a very interesting point. He made a very interesting point, I think, that he would recommend, of course, not to get angry or just to be angry at purpose or live in anger, but as one of the entry points to start to understand the no self. Because when we're angry, we have a strong sense of an I. It's in flames. And of course, it's very unpleasant, as Stephen said, and it's suffering. So, of course, that also helps us to be compassionate with us and with whoever is angry. But that's the point that I think this conversation reminded me, that when we're angry, it's this sense, this delusion or illusion of the I is so strong, and it touches us in such an intimate way, and the way we respond to it, it can always teach us a lot about ourselves. So that's something I just wanted to mention.
Thank you. That's an excellent point. Thank you.
Thank you to this monk. I'll remember the name and then I'll bring it here.
Thank you. Thank you, Leonardo. That was
Thank you.
Great point, and a wonderful thing to end on. So the reification of the sense of I that we cling to, that we desire. And with that, I want to say that it's been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to exploring this more with you all. And we will do so. We'll do so this Thursday, and I hope that we'll see you all there. And I want to thank you all for being here with us tonight on this very important topic. We're going to get more into it. We're going to get deep into it and more self-reflective, and healing ourselves. We can heal the world. All right. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful morning. Peace to yourself. Peace to all. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
you.
everybody.
Well,
Bye, everybody.
Stay well. Take care. Bye-bye,
blessings.
everybody.
Be well.
Have a
Bye,
great week.
everybody. Bye.
See you Thursday.